The alien village stood in silence under a red sky. Strange trees with glowing leaves swayed in the hot wind, and small huts built from crystal stone surrounded the wide village ground. Life was usually calm here, but today there was sadness. At the center of the village sat a child. The child's skin shimmered with soft blue light, and its large silver eyes looked down at the ground. One of its small arms was missing. Where the limb should have been, only a scar remained. The other children of the village played with glowing orbs of energy, laughing and running. But this child could not join them. It only watched, quiet, its face heavy with pain. The villagers whispered. They pitied the child, but they also felt fear. The galactic law was clear. No species was allowed to change or fix the body of another. No help could be given. If the body was broken, it must remain broken. That was the rule, set by the Queen herself to protect the natural path of every being. So the child remained alone. But that day, something different happened. From the far edge of the desert, a traveler walked into the village. His clothes were simple, covered with sand and dust. His face was human. His steps were tired, but his eyes were sharp. The villagers stared. Humans rarely came this far. Humans were strange to them. Builders, creators, problem solvers. Some aliens admired humans. Others feared them, for humans often broke rules if their hearts told them so. The man looked around. Then he saw the child. He stopped walking. His eyes locked on the small figure sitting alone. For a moment he said nothing, but inside his heart he felt a heavy pull. The sadness in the child's eyes reminded him of something long ago, something from his own world, his own people. The child lifted its head. Their eyes met. The man slowly walked closer. His boots pressed against the crystal ground, echoing in the silence. The villagers stepped back, whispering louder now. They knew what humans were capable of. They feared trouble. The man knelt down in front of the child. His voice was calm, soft, but it carried weight. "What happened to you?" he asked. The child looked away. It said nothing at first. Then in a voice quiet as the wind it answered, "I was born this way, without a limb." The man's eyes softened. He could see the pain behind the child's words. "Do you want to play with the others?" he asked. The child's eyes filled with tears. "I cannot. I will never be like them. It is forbidden for anyone to help me. I'm broken. I must stay broken." The man's jaw tightened. He looked around at the villagers. None of them spoke. None of them moved. They only watched, waiting. "Who told you this?" the man asked. "The Queen," the child whispered. "The law says so. No one can change what the body is." The man closed his eyes for a moment. He felt anger rising inside, but he did not show it. He placed a hand on the ground, then looked back at the child. "I am human," he said, "and we do not believe in leaving someone broken." The villagers gasped. A heavy silence fell over the village square. The child looked at him, confused. The man leaned closer, his voice firm. "If I told you I could build you a new limb, would you want it?" The child's silver eyes widened. For the first time, hope appeared there. The child's lips trembled, but it nodded. "Yes," the child whispered. "Yes, I would." The man's eyes hardened with resolve. He stood up tall, his shadow falling over the ground. The villagers whispered again, louder this time. Fear grew among them. They knew what this meant. If the man broke the law, the Queen's wrath would come. Punishment would be harsh, not only for him but for all who allowed it. But the man did not care. He looked down at the child one last time and said, "Then I will build it. I promise you this, no child should suffer if it can be stopped. Not on my watch." The child's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of hope. Around them the wind howled. The glowing leaves of the trees shimmered as if the world itself was listening. The villagers stepped back in fear. Some whispered that doom was coming. Others silently felt a spark of wonder, because in that single promise something powerful had begun. The law of the galaxy was about to be challenged. And it all started with one human, one child, and a promise under a red sky. Night fell on the alien village. The red sky darkened into violet, and 2 moons rose above the land, glowing like watchful eyes. The villagers lit crystal lanterns, their soft light spreading across the square. Yet even in this gentle glow, tension filled the air. The human traveler sat near a fire, sharpening a strange tool he carried in his pack. Sparks jumped as the metal scraped. His hands moved with skill, like someone who had built many things before. His eyes, however, never left the small child sitting close to him. The child held its one good arm close to its chest. It still did not fully believe what the human had promised. Could such a thing be real? A new limb? A chance to run, to play, to live like the others? The villagers gathered in groups around the square. They whispered, throwing nervous glances at the human. Some argued that he should be stopped before the Queen's law was broken. Others were curious. Humans were famous for creating impossible things. Finally, the village elder, an alien with long silver horns and skin that glowed faintly green, stepped forward. He stood tall before the human, his voice heavy with caution. "Stranger," the elder said, "you speak words that can destroy us. The law of the Queen is not a suggestion, it is truth. If you build this child a limb, her guards will come. Punishment will be death." The human looked up from his tool. His eyes were calm, but his jaw was firm. "Then so be it," he said. "I do not fear death if it means giving this child a chance to live." The crowd gasped. The elder's face darkened. "Why?" he demanded. "Why risk everything for one child that is not even your kind?" The human paused, staring at the fire. His mind went back to Earth, to a memory buried deep. He saw a small boy, his own brother, lying weak, his leg crushed from an accident. Doctors had worked for months to build him an artificial leg, a limb of steel and wires. When his brother walked again for the first time, the human had seen pure joy on his face. It was that memory that lived inside him now. He looked back at the elder and spoke, his voice low but steady. "Because once my people did this for my brother, and I saw the light return to his eyes. That is why. No child should carry despair if I can take it away." The elder stepped back. The villagers murmured. Some were moved. Others grew fearful. The child looked at the human, hope shining brighter than ever. "You will really do this for me?" it asked. The human turned to the child and gave a small smile. "Yes," he said simply. "I will keep my promise." But promises alone were not enough. The human rose to his feet and asked the villagers for a place to work. At first, no one moved. Fear gripped them. But one villager, a mother with 3 children, stepped forward. Her voice trembled, yet her courage showed. "My house has an old workshop," she said. "It has tools we no longer use. You may stay there. If the Queen's guards come, they can punish me first." The crowd stirred, shocked at her bravery. The human bowed his head in respect. "Thank you," he said. That night he entered the workshop. Dust and cobwebs filled the air, but to him it felt like home. He laid out his tools, cutters, welders, tiny instruments of human design. He placed strange crystals from his pouch on the table. They glowed softly, pulsing with energy. The child sat nearby, watching every movement with wide eyes. "What are those?" it asked, pointing at the glowing crystals. "Energy stones," the human explained. "I collected them from different worlds. They will power the limb and make it move like it was always part of you." The child tilted its head, amazed. "It will feel real?" The human stopped working for a moment. He looked at the child. "It may not feel the same as flesh," he admitted, "but it will be strong. It will carry you. And when you walk, you will not walk in shame, but in pride." The child smiled for the first time that night. Hours passed. The sound of tools echoed from the workshop. Metal striking metal, sparks flashing, gears clicking together. The human worked with focus, his brow wet with sweat. He shaped steel bones, fitted crystal joints, and carved delicate designs that matched the child's alien body. But outside, the villagers grew restless. Some kept watch at the edges of the desert, fearing to see the Queen's ships. Others prayed quietly for protection. The law had never been broken in their village before. If the Queen came, she might destroy them all. Yet inside the workshop, none of that mattered. There was only the human, the child, and the promise. At one point, the child spoke softly, almost like a confession. "Do you think the Queen will be angry?" The human did not stop working. He answered while turning a crystal joint in his hand. "Angry? Perhaps. But sometimes even queens need to see the truth, and sometimes the truth is small and fragile, like a child with hope in their eyes." The child's heart filled with warmth. It believed him. As the night deepened, the limb began to take shape. It was unlike anything the villagers had ever seen. Smooth metal that shone under the lantern light, fused with glowing crystal veins that pulsed like living blood. It looked almost alive, as if it had been born, not built. The human lifted it in his hands and whispered, "Tomorrow you will walk." The child stared at the limb with awe. Its eyes glowed brighter than the moons above. But in the distance, beyond the desert, a shadow moved in the sky. A silent ship, dark as night, slowly drifted closer. The Queen's law had already been disturbed, and someone was coming to see why. The workshop was quiet except for the sound of tools striking metal. Sparks flew in the dim light, dancing across the stone walls. The human bent over the table, his hands steady, his eyes sharp. He moved like someone who had done this 100 times before, though never under such heavy risk. The child sat on a small chair nearby, watching with wide silver eyes. Every strike of the hammer, every spark of fire made its heart beat faster. The limb on the table was no longer just pieces of metal and crystal. It was becoming real. But outside the workshop, fear grew. The villagers whispered in the streets, their lanterns glowing in the night. Some said the human would save the child. Others said he would bring ruin to them all. And in the far distance, the shadow of a ship still hung in the sky, unseen by most but moving closer with every hour. Inside, the human worked without pause. He cut small gears from silver metal, polished them until they gleamed, then set them into place inside the hollow bones of the limb. He fused glowing crystals into the frame, each one pulsing like a heartbeat. The air smelled of hot iron and burning dust. At last, the child spoke. "Why do you risk everything for me?" it asked. The human did not look up from his work. "Because once someone risked everything for me," he said simply. The child tilted its head. "Who?" The human's voice dropped low, almost like a whisper. "My brother. Long ago he was hurt. They said he would never walk again. But he believed in me. He trusted me to build something new for him. And I did. That trust changed everything." He tightened a crystal joint with a wrench, then looked at the child. His eyes glowed in the firelight. "Now I see the same trust in you." The child said nothing, but its eyes filled with quiet hope. Hours passed. The limb grew more complete. The human carved delicate patterns into the surface, shaping it to match the alien's natural skin. It would not only function, it would belong. It would look like it was always meant to be part of the child's body. But then a sudden noise echoed outside. A thud, heavy and sharp. The child jumped, its eyes wide. The human froze, tools in hand, voices murmured near the workshop door. "Villagers." One voice was angry. "We must stop this now. If the Queen finds out, we are doomed." Another voice, softer, argued back. "And if she does not? What if the human succeeds? Will you deny the child a chance at life?" The voices clashed, growing louder. The human pressed a finger to his lips, signaling the child to stay silent. He placed the half-finished limb gently on the table and walked to the door. When he opened it, the villagers fell silent. Their eyes darted to the glowing crystals inside the workshop, to the strange shapes of metal on the table. They had never seen such things before. The human spoke firmly. "If you fear the Queen, then go. But do not stand in my way." The angry villager stepped forward, his voice trembling with rage. "You will bring death to us all. The Queen's law is not to be broken. She will send her guards. They will burn this village to ash." The human's eyes narrowed. His voice was calm, but it cut like steel. "Then let her burn me first. But I will not stop." The villagers stepped back. Some lowered their heads, ashamed of their fear. Others whispered that maybe, just maybe, this human could do the impossible. The door closed again, leaving the workshop in silence. The child's voice broke the stillness. "They are afraid," it said softly. "Yes," the human replied, returning to his work. "Fear is a cage, but hope breaks cages." He lifted the nearly finished limb, its surface glowing faintly. He turned it in the firelight, examining every joint. It was almost ready, but one last piece was missing: the power core. The human reached into his pack and pulled out a small crystal unlike the others. It was deep blue, glowing softly with sparks of white light inside. He held it with care as if it were alive. "This," he said, "is a star fragment, a piece of energy I found on a dead world. It will give the limb strength more than flesh ever could." The child's eyes widened. "A star?" The human nodded. "Yes, tomorrow you will not only walk, you will carry a piece of the stars within you." The child's breath caught. It could not even imagine such a gift. Carefully, the human fitted the crystal into the center of the limb. The veins of glowing stone lit up one by one until the whole arm pulsed with light. It hummed, alive, as if breathing. The child reached out with its good hand, touching the limb gently. Warmth spread from the crystal into its skin. It felt real. It felt alive. The human smiled. Soon, he said. Tomorrow it will be yours. But as the words left his mouth, the sound of engines rolled across the night sky. Deep, heavy, and growing louder. The child froze. The human's smile faded. He stepped to the window and looked out. Above the desert, lights flashed in the clouds. A ship was descending, dark, massive, and silent like a predator. The Queen's guards had come. Morning came slowly over the alien desert. The red horizon brightened with golden light, and the two moons faded into the sky. The village woke in silence. Everyone knew what had happened in the workshop during the night. Everyone also feared what might come today. Inside the workshop, the human wiped sweat from his face. His eyes were tired, but his hands were steady. On the table lay the finished limb, metal bones wrapped in shining silver, crystal veins glowing faint blue, and a star fragment pulsing at its heart. It looked alive, as if it were waiting to move. The child sat nearby, trembling with excitement and fear. Its silver eyes never left the limb. For so long it had dreamed of running, of playing with the others. Now the dream was close, but so was danger. The sound of engines still echoed faintly in the distance, a reminder that the Queen's guards might soon arrive. The human crouched beside the child. His voice was calm, though he knew the risk. "Are you ready?" The child swallowed, then nodded. Yes, the human lifted the shining limb with both hands. It hummed softly like a sleeping heart. He examined the child's shoulder carefully. The skin there was smooth but scarred from birth. He placed gentle fingers along the edge, finding the right point. "This may hurt," he warned. The child's lips trembled. "I don't care. Please, make me whole." The human gave a small nod. He placed the limb against the child's body. With a twist of his tool, he activated the connectors. The crystals flared, light spreading through the silver lines. The workshop filled with a faint hum, like the whisper of wind through trees. The child gasped. Pain shot through its body, but with it came a strange warmth. Flowing from the star fragment deep into its bones, the metal fused to skin, the crystals joined with nerves, and the limb became part of the child's body. For a moment the child cried out, eyes filled with tears. The villagers outside heard the cry and gasped. They gathered near the workshop, waiting in silence, their fear growing. Inside, the human kept working, his hands quick and precise. He whispered, steadying the child. "Breathe, hold on. It is almost done." Then slowly the pain faded. The light dimmed, leaving the limb glowing softly like moonlight on water. The human stepped back. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. He looked at the child. "Try to move it," he said. The child hesitated. Its new fingers twitched, then curled into a fist. The child gasped again, this time not from pain but from wonder. Slowly it lifted the arm, then lowered it. The metal responded as if it were flesh, smooth and natural. Tears rolled down the child's cheeks. "It listens to me. It's mine." The human smiled, his eyes soft. "Yes, now stand." The child pushed itself up with both arms for the first time. Its legs shook, but it rose. The villagers at the door fell silent, watching with wide eyes. The child took one step, then another. The glowing limb moved perfectly, balanced and strong, and then, with a sudden laugh, the child began to run. It stumbled at first, but then it found rhythm. It ran across the workshop floor, the new limb swinging naturally with every movement. The sound of its feet echoed quick and light like music. The villagers gasped. Some covered their mouths. Others whispered in awe. No one had ever seen such a thing. The child spun around, its silver eyes shining with joy. "Look, I can run. I can run." It rushed back to the human and threw its arms around him. The new limb pressed against his back, glowing warmly. For the first time, the child's laughter filled the workshop, bright and alive. The human closed his eyes, holding the child gently. His promise was kept, but outside the mood was not only joy. Fear still lingered. The elder stepped forward, his face pale. "You have done the impossible," he said. "But the Queen will not forgive this. Her law is broken. Her guards will come." The human met his gaze calmly. "Then let them come." The villagers shifted uneasily. Some whispered that the human had brought doom. Others whispered that maybe, just maybe, he had brought hope. The child, still holding the human's hand, looked up. "Will the Queen really be angry?" The human crouched, meeting the child's eyes. His voice was steady. Perhaps. But sometimes anger must give way to truth. And the truth is clear, you are no longer broken. The child smiled, stronger now than ever before. Suddenly a loud sound rolled across the sky. A deep hum, heavy and cold. The villagers looked up in terror. Above the desert a dark shape descended, larger now, its engines glowing like fire. The Queen's ship. The villagers scattered, some running to their homes, others falling to their knees in fear. The elder shouted, "It is too late! They are here!" The human stood tall, the child at his side, the new limb glowing like starlight. He did not move, did not hide. His voice was calm, almost like steel. "Then let her see," he said. The ship's shadow covered the village. Dust rose as it landed. The air shook with power. The child gripped the human's hand tighter. The villagers held their breath. The Queen's arrival was no longer rumor. It was real. And in that moment, hope and fear stood side by side. The ground shook as the Queen's ship landed on the edge of the village. Dust rose in heavy clouds, and the glowing trees bent under the force of the engines. The villagers dropped to their knees, trembling. None dared to look directly at the dark vessel. The child clung to the human's side, its new limb glowing faintly with crystal light. It was no longer broken, no longer silent, but now it stood in the shadow of the greatest danger of all. The ship's ramp opened with a hiss. Out marched the Queen's guards. They were tall, armored in black and silver, with helmets shaped like sharp blades. Their eyes glowed red behind the glass, and each carried a staff that hummed with power. The first guard stepped forward, his voice echoing like thunder. "Who dares break the sacred law?" The villagers trembled harder. Some pointed at the human, whispering, "It was him, the human." Others stayed silent, too afraid to speak. The guard's red gaze fell on the child. His voice hardened. "And who wears a false limb in defiance of the Queen?" The child stepped back, gripping the human's arm. Its silver eyes filled with fear. The human placed himself in front of the child, standing tall, unflinching. His voice was steady. "I gave the child this limb. If you seek blame, seek it from me." The guards shifted, their armor gleaming in the rising sun. The leader raised his staff. "You admit your crime? Then you know the punishment. The law is clear. No one may alter the natural body of another. You have broken the order of life itself." The villagers gasped. Some hid their faces. Others whispered that the human was doomed, but the human did not lower his eyes. He spoke firmly, his voice carrying across the silent square. "The law may be clear, but it is cruel. This child was born without hope. I gave hope back. If that is a crime, then your law is broken, not me." The guard's red eyes glowed brighter. "Your words are dangerous." They challenged the Queen herself. The child trembled, but then, surprising everyone, it stepped out from behind the human. Its new limb shimmered in the light, glowing brighter with every movement. The child raised its voice, small but brave. "I am not broken anymore. I can walk. I can run. I can live." "Why is that wrong?" The villagers gasped again. No one had ever dared speak against the law, especially not a child. The guards froze for a moment, as if the words had struck them. Then the leader growled, pointing his staff at the child. "Silence. The law is not to be questioned. The Queen will decide your fate." He raised his hand, and more guards marched forward, surrounding the human and the child. Their staffs crackled with energy, ready to strike. The villagers cried out, begging for mercy. Some shouted, "Spare the child! Take the human instead." Others whispered prayers to the sky. The human's eyes hardened. He clenched his fists, ready to fight if needed. But deep inside, he knew this was not a battle of strength, it was a battle of truth. Then a voice echoed across the square. A voice soft yet powerful. Enough, the guards froze. The villagers dropped flat to the ground. Even the wind seemed to stop. Down the ramp slowly came the Queen. She was taller than any guard, her body wrapped in flowing silver robes that shimmered like liquid. Her crown glowed with jewels that pulsed like living stars. Her eyes, sharp and golden, scanned the village with cold calm. The guards knelt instantly. The villagers bowed, pressing their foreheads to the dirt. None dared to lift their eyes. Only the human remained standing. Only the child, clinging to his side, dared to look at her. The Queen stopped before them. Her gaze fell first on the human, then slowly on the child's glowing limb. Her voice was quiet, but every word carried weight. "You built this?" she asked the human. The human stood tall. Yes, you knew the law. Yes. And still you gave the child a false limb? The human's jaw tightened. His answer was simple. Yes. The villagers trembled. The guards gripped their staffs. The silence stretched long, heavy, and sharp as a blade. Finally, the queen turned her gaze to the child. Her golden eyes narrowed as she studied the limb. The way it moved, the way it glowed with crystal light. She stepped closer. The child's breath caught. Its new fingers trembled, but it did not hide. The queen's voice was colder now. Do you understand what has been done to you? The child swallowed hard. Then in a trembling voice it spoke. Yes, I was broken. But now I can live. I can play. I can run. If that is against the law, then the law is wrong. Gasps filled the square. The villagers dared not breathe. Even the guards shifted uneasily, their red eyes flickering. The queen's face remained unreadable. Her long fingers brushed lightly over the glowing limb. The crystal veins pulsed under her touch, alive with energy. For a moment, her golden eyes softened, but then, like a storm cloud, her expression hardened again. She turned back to the human. You have defied me. You have broken what I built. And now, she paused, her words heavy with danger. You will face judgment. The crowd trembled. The guards raised their staffs. The human did not flinch. He stepped forward, his voice firm. Then let your judgment fall on me. But know this, I would do it again. 100 times. 1,000. Because no law should force a child to suffer. The queen's golden eyes burned as she stared at him, and the village held its breath, waiting for her next word. The village square was silent. Only the wind moved, carrying dust across the ground. The guards stood still, their red eyes glowing, their staffs crackling with hidden power. The villagers knelt low, afraid even to breathe. At the center stood the queen, her silver robes glowing faintly under the rising sun. Her crown shimmered like starlight, her golden eyes locked on the human. She spoke softly, but her words were sharper than any blade. You defy me. The human did not bow. He did not kneel. He met her gaze without fear. I defy a law that has no mercy, he answered. The villagers gasped. No one had ever spoken to the queen in such a way. To challenge her was to invite death. The queen's golden eyes narrowed. She stepped closer, her voice like a storm contained inside a whisper. Do you know who I am? Yes, the human replied. You are the one who made this law. You are the one who says a child must remain broken even when it can be healed. The guards stiffened, ready to strike. But the queen raised her hand and they stopped. Her voice grew colder. Do you believe your hands are wiser than the law of 1,000 worlds? Do you think your will is greater than mine? The human took a slow breath. His voice was steady, calm, but filled with fire. I believe no law is greater than kindness, and no queen is greater than the smile of a child. The child, standing close to him, trembled but lifted its glowing limb higher, showing it to the queen. He kept his promise, the child said, its voice clear. He gave me life. Why should I be punished for living? The queen's eyes flicked to the limb. The glowing veins pulsed faintly, alive with the star fragment's energy. She reached out with long fingers, brushing the smooth surface. The villagers held their breath. Would she destroy it with a touch? But she did not. Instead, her fingers lingered, and for a brief moment her expression softened. It was gone quickly, replaced with cold steel. Her gaze turned back to the human. You risk your life. You risk the life of this village. Tell me why. Not with memory. Not with excuses. Tell me now, why? The human's voice grew firm, carrying through the air so every villager could hear. Because suffering should not be protected. Because hope should not be forbidden. And because no child, no matter what world they are born on, should be left behind when I can help. Silence followed. The villagers looked at one another. Some wept quietly, hearing words they had never dared to think. The queen studied him for a long time. Her golden eyes were unreadable, filled with storms. She turned suddenly, her silver robe swirling like water, and walked a few steps away. The guards shifted uneasily. The villagers pressed their faces lower into the dirt. Then the queen spoke again, her voice low. When I was young, I too was broken. The crowd froze. No one had ever heard the queen speak of herself. She lifted her hand, pulling back the silver cloth on her arm. Gasps echoed through the square. Her right arm was not flesh, it was crystal. A limb made from the same star fragments the human had used, Her golden eyes glimmered with old pain. My people built this for me long ago before the law. But it brought war. Worlds fought to reshape life, to create soldiers, to make monsters. Entire species were destroyed because of such power. That is why the law exists. The human listened. For the first time, he understood the shadow behind her words. But still he stepped closer. Then punish those who make monsters, he said. Not those who give children a chance to laugh. The queen's eyes burned. For a moment anger flashed. But then it faded into something deeper, conflict. The child stepped forward, raising its glowing limb. Its voice was small but strong. I am not a weapon. I am not a monster. I am just a child. Please let me live. The queen's hand trembled. She lowered her gaze, staring at the ground. The villagers dared to lift their eyes, watching their queen struggle. Finally she whispered, her voice heavy with memory. You remind me of myself. The words fell like thunder. The guards shifted, unsure. The villagers gasped, their fear slowly turning into hope. The human spoke quietly, carefully. Then let her live as you were allowed to live. The queen turned back, her golden eyes filled with storms of thought. She raised her hand and the guards lowered their staffs. The air grew lighter, though the silence was still sharp. Her gaze fell on the human once more. You are brave, she said. Or foolish. Perhaps both. But your crime cannot be erased. The villagers froze again. The hope in their hearts faltered. The queen's voice hardened. You will face judgment not by my guards, but by me. The guards pounded their staffs into the ground. The sound echoed like thunder. The villagers bowed low, trembling. The queen stood tall, her silver robes glowing in the morning sun. Tomorrow, she declared, you will stand before me and I will decide your fate. The villagers cried out in fear and wonder. The child clung to the human's side, its silver eyes wide. The human only nodded, calm and steady. So be it, he said, and the queen turned away, her crown shining like a star, leaving the village in silence and suspense. The next day, the village gathered in silence. The square was filled with fear and expectation. The villagers knelt in rows, their glowing lanterns placed on the ground as offerings of peace. None dared to speak loudly. Even the children stayed quiet, watching with wide eyes. At the center of the square stood the human, tall and calm. Beside him was the child, its new limb glowing faintly like starlight under the red sun. The guards surrounded them, their black armor shining, their staffs humming with power. The queen arrived last. Her silver robes flowed like water, her crown glittering as if it carried the weight of stars. She walked slowly, every step heavy with authority. When she reached the center, she raised her hand and silence fell deeper than before. Her golden eyes swept across the crowd, then settled on the human. You stand here today, she said, her voice echoing, because you broke the law of the galaxy. You touched what was forbidden. You gave life where life was not meant to be. The villagers shivered. The guards tightened their circle, but the human did not bow. His voice was steady, carrying across the square. I gave hope where there was none. If that is forbidden, then your law forbids compassion itself. A ripple went through the crowd. Some villagers raised their heads slightly, their eyes shining with courage they did not feel before. The queen's gaze sharpened. She stepped closer, her golden eyes glowing. You speak boldly, she said, but boldness does not erase danger. Once I too was given a limb, and I saw how such gifts were twisted into weapons. Worlds burned because of it. That is why I swore no one would change what was natural. She raised her crystal arm, letting the sun strike its glowing surface. Gasps echoed across the square. This law, she continued, was meant to protect us all. And now you stand here breaking it. Tell me, human, why should I not destroy you for this defiance? The guards lifted their staffs, energy crackling like lightning. The villagers bowed again, covering their heads. The child clutched the human's hand, trembling. The human's eyes did not waver. His voice was firm. Because you are not only a queen, you are a leader who once suffered as this child did. You know what it feels like to be broken. You know the pain of being left behind. That is why you built the law. But laws must change when they no longer protect, they must grow. Just as people grow. The queen's face remained hard, but something flickered in her eyes. The child stepped forward suddenly, its new limb glowing brighter. Its voice was small but strong. I am not a weapon. I am not a danger. I only wanted to play, to run, to be like the others, please. Do not punish him for giving me life. The silence was thick. Even the guards hesitated. The villagers dared to lift their eyes, watching the queen's face closely. The queen stared at the child for a long time. Her golden eyes softened just slightly. Then she turned to the crowd. "Tell me," she called, her voice echoing. "What do you see here? Do you see a crime? Do you see a threat? Or do you see a child who can now live?" The villagers looked at each other, uncertain. Then one voice rose from the crowd. A mother cried out, "I see hope." Another villager shouted, "I see life." Soon more voices joined, louder and louder, until the square filled with cries. "Hope! Life! Future!" The queen raised her hand and the voices fell quiet. Her eyes returned to the human. "You are dangerous," she said. "Your kind always is. You break rules. You challenge order. You force change where others fear it." Her crystal arm glowed faintly. Her voice dropped, softer but filled with weight. "And yet, without danger there is no progress. Without challenge there is no future." The guards shifted uneasily, uncertain of her meaning. The queen looked at the child once more. Her golden eyes softened fully now. "The law is not broken," she said at last. "It is reborn." Asp filled the air. The villagers stared in shock. The queen turned to the human. "You will not be destroyed. Your act will stand. But know this, your choice has changed everything. The galaxy will hear of it. Some will praise you. Others will curse you, and the balance of worlds may tremble." The human bowed his head slightly, the closest thing to respect he would give. "Then let it tremble," he said. The queen's lips curved into the smallest hint of a smile. "So be it," she turned to the guards. "Stand down." The guards lowered their staffs. The heavy crackle of energy faded. The villagers gasped again, this time with relief. The child threw its arms around the human, laughing through tears. The new limb glowed brightly, pulsing with life. The villagers began to cheer, their voices rising like a storm of joy. For the first time in many generations, the law of the queen had bent. The queen raised her hand once more. The cheers quieted. Her voice carried across the square. "Remember this day. A law can protect, but it can also chain. Today we learn that sometimes chains must be broken." She turned and walked back toward her ship, her silver robes shining in the sun. The guards followed, silent. The villagers rushed forward, surrounding the human and the child, their voices full of gratitude and awe. They touched the glowing limb, whispering blessings. The human looked at the child, smiling. "You are free now. Run." The child laughed and did just that, running across the square, its new limb moving as if it had always been part of its body. The human watched, knowing this was only the beginning. The queen's decision would echo across the galaxy. Worlds would argue, some would fight. But one truth had been planted, and it would grow. Because one human had dared to say no. Because one child had dared to live.